Hey there, CG Math students. Welcome to class for homework S.11, rational number fluency. So if you're absent or just want a refresher, you can go ahead and watch these notes. I'm going to do the first page with you guys. So if I start you off with a percent, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can go. One of the easiest ways I think to go next is just to do the picture. 200% means I have two wholes and then 50% left over, right? So a half, right? So if I just draw this picture, I've got one whole, two wholes, and then if I divide this up into halves, I've got one half. Right? Dividing that up into halves can also get me my mixed number, and it can get me my other fraction. Right? Notice my mixed number is going to be two wholes for my picture, right? Two wholes and one half. Right? I could also look at my picture to find my fraction, right? Then count up the halves I got. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 5 halves. Right? 5 over 2 is 5 halves. Another way to think about it is 2 and 1 half. If I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. Add it to 1. Again, 5 over 2. Bunch of different ways to think about it, right? Another fraction, you just take 2 and 1 half. And again, you can multiply it by any factor you want. I like keeping it simple, multiplying it by 2. You keep the whole number exactly the same, and it's the fraction that you want to multiply. So it becomes 2 over 4, right? 2 and 2/4 is the same thing as 2 and 1 half. It's just simplified. It's actually the same thing as 5 over 2. It's just simplified. It's also the same thing as 250%. It's just simplified. For your decimal, you want to really break down 2 and 1 half. So again, you got two wholes and 1 half, you should have this memorized, is 0.5. So you got 2.5. For another decimal, 2.50. You could just add a 0. For taking half, I think it would be probably pretty easy just to take half of 5 over 2. So I'll just take 5 over 2 divided by 2 over 1. Remember, you're going to flip the second fraction and change it to multiplication. So we got 5 over 2 times 1 over 2. That gives you 5 over 4. Remember, I do not accept any improper fractions, so you got to change that to a mixed number. It's 1 and 1/4. For doubling it, and it might be easy just to take 250% and add it to each other, either times it by 2 or just add it twice. And notice you get 500%. Make sure you put the percent sign because 500 is way different than 500%. All right. Next one, 175%. Let's go a different route this time. Instead of doing a picture, let's start off with a decimal. So if I have 175%, I start at the end of the decimal and I swoop 2 times back to the left. Okay, so that gives me 1.75. Another decimal would then just be 1.750, right? If I try to get my mixed number out of this, I'm breaking down what is 1.75 as a mixed number. Well, I've got one whole, and now 0.75, again, hopefully I've memorized that. That's 3 over 4, right? 1 3/4. I could break down 1 3/4, and I could say, all right, it's 1 times 4, which is 4, plus 3, gets me 7 over 4. I can easily do my picture right now, because I'm making a picture that's 1 3/4, so one whole. And then my next one is going to be divided up into fourths. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And 3 of those are going to be covered in, right? 1 3/4. And I could easily also show 7/4 by just dividing up my whole into fourths. And you'll notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/4, just like I said, 7/4 in that fraction. For taking half, again, I always find it pretty easy just to take half of the fraction. So 7/4 divided by 2 over 1, you're going to flip it, change it to multiplication. So it becomes 7/4 times 1 over 2. That gives you 7/8. That is totally simplified, and so you are good to go. For my decimal, maybe it'd be nice and easy just to add it up the decimal. So 1.75 plus 1.75, that's 10, carry your 1, that'll be 15, carry your 1 again, so you get 3.50, right? You could have easily done the percent, you could have done the fraction again, you could have done the picture. It's really up to you, right? And finally, last row, 260%. Again, what's the easiest thing for you? You know what? Maybe doubling it is the easiest thing right off the bat. 260% plus 260%. It's all up to you. You pick what you want to do. Choose your own adventure almost. Remember, it's not 520, it's 520%, right? That's 5 holes with 20 extra percent when you double that. Taking half might be easy. You know, 2 into 260. 2 goes in there 1 time. Nothing left over. Drop down your 6. 2 goes in there 3 times. Nothing left over. Drop down your 0. 2 goes into 0 0 times. So 130. And again, that's a percent, right? Okay, so now where do we go? Well, 260%. Let's break that down into decimal form, right? That might be easy. So 260% in the decimal form. Remember, you start at the end of the decimal. Swoop 2 times to the left. So that's 2.60. Another decimal, oftentimes I just say add a 0. Well, we could also just take away a 0. 2.6, right? It's the same thing. Let's go to the mixed number now. 2.6, let's break it down. Remember, that 6 is in the tenths place, right? So it could be 6 over 10, but you could simplify that, and hopefully this is, again, one that you've memorized. You got 2 holes, and what is 0.6 as a fraction? It's 3/5. Got to memorize your fourths, your thirds, your fifths, your halves, your tenths, right? So 2 3/5. Now that I have 2 3/5, it's going to be really easy for me to figure out what my actual fraction is. So 2 times 5 is 10. So add it to 3, so I have 13 over 5. I could easily make the picture as well. I'm going to have 2 holes, right? That's 1 hole, 2 holes, and the last one's going to be divided up into fifths. So 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, all the fifths. And then again, I could do this right down all of my holes as well, and then I could easily count up all the pieces. So I want 3/5 covered in, so 1, 2, 3, and that represents 2 3/5. Or if I count them up, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 fifths. Exactly what I said over there. Right? Placing values A, B, and C. Don't forget this. You got to do this, right? So 2.50. That's going to be easy. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. 2.50 is going to be right here. So A, then you can put 2.5, right? 1.75 going to be a little bit more difficult. So go to 1.7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's got 75's got to be in between 70 and 80. So B is going to be about right there. 1.75, you could easily say 175% as well. You could easily say 1 3/4. It's really up to you, right? And then the last one, 2.60, is just going to be right on the other side of C. You could say 2.6. You could say 260%. You could say 2 3/5. A whole bunch of different ways you could say that. Right? So backside is yours. Again, remember with this decimal with the thirds, right? Everything else you can just add a 0 except if it's a repeating decimal. So another decimal here is not going to be 2.33330. It's going to be 2.3333. You could add a 3. You could also take away a 3, right? And your percent, if you set up your decimal, you move from the decimal, you move 2 times to the right. That's going to be 233.3 repeated percent, right? And then for your mixed number, just break it down, right? You got 2 holes, and then what is 0.333 repeated? Again, that's one you got to memorize. That is 1/3, right? So you got 2 1/3, and then you just kind of continue to take it from there, right? That's it. Finish the rest.